Hello, welcome back to the Hyperpack channel, everybody. I'd like to welcome all the new subscribers that have recently chose to join up here. So today I'm working on building another Slant 6 engine here, and I just wanted to show you a few things that you can think about if you're into actually building one of these for performance and or longevity, and a few little things that make life a little easier with these engines as well. So first of all, one of the things that I like to do is put an extension off of the coolant drain on the block, and then you can put a little elbow on it or ball valve, and that way when you drain, a lot of times you get these engines and they're old and they've been sitting around, so sometimes you have to go through the coolant system often just to drain everything out, just to get it flushed and clean. But one of the things you can do is put a little 45 on the end of this after a 4-inch piece of pipe, and that will kind of direct the coolant out when it's in the car so that it goes, mostly onto the ground rather than coming down the side of the block and making a mess of everything under there. It's still going to make a little bit of a mess, but it's just a little cleaner. So that's something that I do, just adding that little bit of pipe on there. The other thing I wanted to show you today is if you go and get some ARP head studs. So yes, ARP does make main studs and head studs for these engines, and you can get ARP to make anything you want in a custom application, of course, but these are in the catalog. And one of the things that I had always done on my previous builds, and the last time I had this one together, I figured, I'm not going to do that this time, but I think I should have, and I went back, and for this particular iteration of this engine I did. So the diameter of the head stud from ARP is quite a bit larger. These are 7/16 diameter studs. These are quite a bit larger than the factory head bolts, which is great for, I think, 13 out of the 14 bolts on there. The one that you got to watch out for is this one back here. So what I did was I measured the diameter on the original head stud, and then I went to the lathe and I just turned this down and kind of smoothed it out. So it's still the ARP diameter at the top and the bottom, but in the middle it's a little thinner there so that the oil can run through. So I had a little low flow situation coming up here to the rocker arms on the last iteration of this build, and I wasn't quite satisfied. And the only thing I could really figure out was, when I put this together last time, I just put the regular ARP head stud in this location instead of turning it down. So this time I'm going to try turning it down. And in all the other builds that I've done, I guess I have 2 other engines that I use the head studs on, and I don't have any top end oiling issues. So I'm thinking what happens is that larger diameter on the ARP studs is going to create a restriction in that oil passage up to here, which then oils out the rocker arm tips and the rocker arm screws down the push rods there. The other thing that I've started to do, and this is kind of an old school trick, is just paint the push rods. And I got a custom set of Smith Brothers push rods for this. I could use stock push rods, but with the spring pressures I'm running, I don't think that's wise to do. So I'm just going to get some custom ones. And then I put a little bit of paint on so I could see when I first started up if they're spinning or not. That can help me to identify anything that could be a little bizarre. All right, so I made it a little further along on the engine here. Got the head on, got everything torqued down with the special lube, ARP lube, and torque the fasteners in 3 stages. I'm using a factory steel shim head gasket, one of these. I've got a few of them on hand, but anyway, I spray the copper coating on there, let it flash off, and then put it on the surface set the head on, torque it down. So now what I'm doing is I'm setting my cold lash. So this is not a stock camshaft by any means. It's got quite a bit more duration and lift than stock. And I'm going back and trying these roller rockers. I honestly can't remember if these are 1.5 or 1.6s. I'd have to measure them. A lot of the parts that I have that I use in my various builds are secondhand from ex-racers and so forth. You can certainly go and buy a set of Yellow Terras out of Australia. You might be spending around $1,700-$1,800 United States dollars to buy those parts. Again, these are just secondhand. They've been on a race car. They've been spun over 6,000 RPM, and they're a little bit beat up, but they'll do the job definitely for what I'm doing on my autocross car here. So I'm just setting the what I call the initial lash. This isn't the hot lash. This isn't the final lash. This is just making sure that when I start it up, I don't have any valves that are hanging open, allowing compression not to happen. So I'm setting this, I just kind of pick an arbitrary number, but I'm setting it at 18 here today, which should be kind of close in between what I need. So right now, I went back and bought new push rods for this engine, because the push rods I had, I figured out were just a little on the short side. So these are essentially stock length push rods, and with the head milled and the cam ground to the lobes that are on there, you know, when you get a higher lift cam, you got a lower base circle, essentially a smaller diameter base circle, to get that lift out of the lobe on the camshaft. So what I'm going to do here is open these up so that there is a little bit of lash on everything. Now this won't be my final lash. I'm getting that 18,000 feeler gauge in there, and they don't have to be really, really exact, but just enough so that when I do go and run the car for the first time, I don't have any dead cylinders because I got a valve not closing all the way. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'll try to get it as close as I can, even to 18,000 thousandths of an inch on the compression stroke for all these. There we go, those should be good. And now I'll just kind of hold this in place. It might be tricky to do this with the camera, but I'm gonna hold that in place. Spin my lock nuts down. Now if you're doing this on a stock engine, of course you don't have the lock nuts to worry about. You just, your adjuster is your lock nut because of how the factory parts are manufactured. But on this setup, I of course have some lock nuts, because these are kind of more like racing parts on this particular set. Alright, so once I run them down tight, I'll check them again just to make sure that we're kind of close. Yeah, this one closed up just a little bit, so I might be able to back that off and then tighten it down again. Alright, so we'll do a little shop tour here and show you what car this is going in a little bit. And I still have some things to finish up, so hopefully in a week or two I'll have this engine all done and I'll be able to fire it up. So the engine that I was showing you earlier is getting built for my 64 Dart road race Trackday autocross car that I call Grüne. It's green. It's set up for the Trackday and autocross and such. All the suspension and everything's done. It's got like a 1 and I think it's a 1 1/8 firm feel sway bar. It's got the solid mounts here. It's got a 16:1 ratio steering box. It's got polyurethane mounts, bushings I should say, here on the control arms. The torsion bars are over 1 inch in diameter. I mean, if I kind of push on the car here, it doesn't really move at all. It doesn't Doesn't have a lot of give to the suspension. It's sprung nice and solid. It's got, I believe, 13-inch Barra rotors up front with 6 piston. It's running 17 by 8 wheels, 245, 45, 17 tires all the way around. It's pretty messy right now because it's been on the lift and I was driven before it got put in here and taken apart. I don't know if we can see inside very well. Once this car is running again, I'll do a better video on it. I put a bar in here just for some seatbelt mounting points, and then also for some port, because this isn't, you know, these hardtop cars, this B pillar moves around quite a bit, so tried to solidify that somewhat. It has a 5-speed T5 in it. I modified the floor and the trans tunnel for all that. So I've got a little bit of stuff to do on this car to get it all together. I put some roof racks on there for various things. And this is just such a fun car to drive. It is rough. It's not a smooth ride by any means, but man, you could just throw it into pretty much any turn, and every turn, wherever you point it, that's where it's going to go. And yeah, it is a 64 Dart, but I have a 63 grill in it. That's just happenstance because I found this at a swap meet, really good deal, and it cleaned up nice. And I actually like how it looks. That 63 grill, especially when you black it out, it looks a lot more kind of sinister than the 64 one. The 64 one, you know, has this outward facing appearance to it with a Dodge on it. I think it looks kind of dumb in my opinion, but I think that 63 looks a lot more appropriate on these cars. So that's what I put in there. I just kind of like it. You know, it's got a coil spring altercation. I don't think altercation is actually the right term. You can't see it in here very well, but it's got coil springs back here. Leaf springs are gone. It's a triangulated 4-link. It's a Riley Motorsports kit, and yeah, I don't think you can see much under there. It's got rear discs as well. It has a B-body rear end, and it has a like a 68 Roadrunner rear end. So I'm going to get that narrowed down a little bit because I do have some rubbing problems sometimes on this rear lip inside and the wheelhouse up top. So I think I'm going to go to another B-body rear end when I have the time to do so. But it's an 8 3/4. It's a Mopar rear end. So that's what's going on with this car here. And like I said, I hope to get that engine built here by the end of the month. There's some odds and ends over here. If anybody's ever seen my video on the Ruster, got some new parts for the Ruster, new cam, and new torque converter that are matched. I've always just kind of swap meet, you know, tried different torque converters, never had one built actually for the car. And these are all the parts that are going to go back into the 64 Dart when it's done. Those are just all the parts that I took off when I had it apart. Oh yeah, here's another thing too. I'm building a semi-custom valve cover. So on that Dart, when I put it back to stock rockers, the valves must have been pretty tall, and the valves were hitting the rocker arm, or the valve cover here, I should say. The rocker arms are hitting the valve cover. So a temporary fix was just to dab some RTV on it. You can see the witness marks there. And so I'm in the process of making a semi-custom raised area over here, and I've got quite a bit of metal work to do on that. So I cut that out of a different valve cover and kind of sliced and diced. Put some things together, so I'm working on that as well. And that's pretty much it at this point. So thanks for watching, I'll have some more videos coming out when I get the cars out for spring. All right, take care.